Okay, great. Perfect.
Okay, very good. Hello out there in video land. We're going to continue our reading of Dylan Thomas under Milkwood. We're about halfway through and we will probably complete it today. In fact, I can guarantee we'll complete it today, God willing, and all that stuff. And with that, I need to call up the chat. Okay, so Ann Meisner, are you reading today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then I'm going to be following you. And then
I must say my library is great. They sorted out my Zoom problems.
oh, excellent. That's
Yeah,
great.
thanks.
And
Yeah.
Joan is vocal today also. She had her microphone problem sorted out, so we're ready to go. And here we are. So I start with Mrs. Willy Nilly, and then a little message with a rubber stamp. Shop at Mugs. First voice. And willy nilly, rumbling, jockeys out again to the three-seated shack called the House of Commons, in the back where the hens weep and seize in sudden spring shine. Second voice. Herring gulls heckling down to the harbor where the fishermen spit and prop the morning up, and eye the fishy sea smooth to the sea's end as it lulls in blue. Green and gold money, tobacco, tin salmon, hats with feathers, pots of fish paste, warmth for the winter to be, weave and leap in it rich and slippery in the flash and shapes of fishes through the cold sea streets. But with the blue lazy eye the fishermen gaze at that milkmaid whispering water, with no nick or ripple, as though it blew great guns and serpents and typhoon the town. Next, please.
Fisherman. Too rough for fishing today. Second voice. And they thank God and gob at a gull for luck, and moss slow and silent make their way uphill from the still sea toward the sailor's arms as the children school bell. First voice. Spank and scamper, rough and singing out of the school into Draggletail Yard. And Captain Cat at his window says soft to himself the words of their song. Captain Cat to the beat of the singing. Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail kept the baby in a milking pail. Flossie Snail and Johnny Crack, one would pull it out and one would put it back. Oh, it's my turn now, said Flossie Snail, to take the baby from the milking pail. And it's my turn now, said Johnny Crack, to smack it on the head and put it back. Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail kept their baby in a milking pail. One would put it back and one would pull it out, and all it had to drink was ale and stout. For Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail always used to say that stout and ale was good for a baby in a milking pail. Next, please.
First voice. The music of the spheres is heard distinctly over Milkwood. It is the rustle of spring. Second voice. The glee party things in Bethesda graveyard, gay but muffled. First voice. Vegetables make love above the tenors. Second voice. And dogs bark blue in the face. First voice. Miss Ogmar Pritchard belches in a teeny hanky and chases the sunlight with a fly whisk. But even she cannot drive out the spring. From one of the finger bowls, a primrose grows. Second voice. Mrs. Diebread 1 and Mrs. Diebread 2 are sitting outside their house in Donkey Lane, one darkly, one plumply blooming in the quick dewy sun. Mrs. Diebread 2 is looking into a crystal ball, which she holds in the lap of her dirty yellow petticoat, hard against her hard, dark thighs. Mrs. Diebread 2. Cross my palm with silver, out of our housekeeping money. Ah! Mrs. Diebread 1. What do you see, lovey? Mrs. Diebread 2. I see a feather bed with 3 pillows on it, and a text above the bed. I can't read what it says. There's great clouds blowing. Now they've blown away. God is love, the text says. Mrs. Dye Bread 1, delighted. That's our bed. Mrs. Dye Bread 2. And now it's vanished. The sun's spinning like a top. Who's coming out of the sun? It's a hairy little man with big pink lips. He's got a wall eye. Mrs. Dye Bread 1. It's Dye. It's Dye Bread. Mrs. Dye Bread 2. Shh. The feather bed's floating back. The little man's taking his boots off. He's pulling his shirt over his head. He's beating his chest with his fists. He's climbing into bed. Mrs. Dye Bread 1. Go on, go on. Mrs. Dye Bread 2. There's 2 women in the bed. He looks at them both with his head cocked on one side. He's whistling through his teeth. Now he grips his little arms around one of the women. Mrs. Dye Bread 1. Which one? Which one? Mrs. Dye Bread 2. I can't see anymore. There's great clouds blowing again. Mrs. Dye Bread 1. Ah, the mean old clouds. Pause. Children singing fades. Anne?
The first voice, the morning is all singing.
I think it's Ann Doyle, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It doesn't matter. I can swap with you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well,
I
the only reason it matters is in order to read the text, I have my chat list turned off.
Okay.
And I follow Ann Meisner, so have mercy on my poor brain.
Okay. The morning is all singing. The Reverend E.I. Jenkins, busy on his morning call, stops outside the welfare hall to hear Polly Garter as she scrubs the floors for the Mothers' Union dance tonight. Polly Garter singing. I loved a man whose name was Tom. He was strong as a bear and 2 yards long. I loved a man whose name was Dick. He was big as a barrel and 3 feet thick. And I loved a man whose name was Harry, 6 feet tall and sweet as a cherry. But the one I loved best, awake or asleep, was little Willie Wee, and he's 6 feet deep. Oh, Tom, Dick, and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such loving again. But little Willie Wee, who took me on his knee, little Willie Weasel's the man for me. Now men from every parish round run after me and roll me on the ground. But whenever I love another man back, Johnny from the hill or Sailing Jack, I always think as they do what they please of Tom, Dick, and Harry, who were tall as trees. And most I think, when I'm by their side, of little Willie Wee, who drowned and died. Oh, Tom, Dick, and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such loving again. But little Willie Wee, who took me on his knee, little Willie Weasel is the man for me. Reverend Eli Jenkins, praise the Lord, we are a musical nation. And Reverend Jenkins hurries on through the town to visit the sick with jelly and poems. Next, please.
First voice. The town's as full as a lovebird's egg. Mr. Waldo. There goes the Reverend. First voice says, Mr. Waldo at the smoked herring brown window of the unwashed sailor's arms. Mr. Waldo, with his brolly and his odes. Fill 'em up, Sinbad. I'm on the trickle today. Second voice. The silent fishermen flush down their pints. Sinbad. Oh, Mr. Waldo. First voice. Sighs. Sinbad sailors. Sinbad. I dote on that gossamer Benyon. She's a lady all over. First voice. And Mr. Walden, who is thinking of a woman soft as Eve and sharp as sciatica to share his bread pudding bed, answers Mr. Waldo. No lady that I know is. Sinbad. And if only Grandma'd die, cross my heart, I'd go down on my knees, Mr. Waldo, and I'd say, Miss Gossamer, I'd say, children's voices. When birds do sing, hey, ding-a-ding-a-ding, sweet lovebirds love the spring. Second voice, Polly Garter sings still on her knees. Polly Garter, Tom, Dick, and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such Children, ding a ding. Polly Carter again. Katrina.
First voice. And the morning school is over, and Captain Cat at his curtained schooner's porthole open to the spring sun tides here, the naughty forfeiting children tumble and rhyme on the cobbles. Girls' voices. Gwenny, call the boys, they make such a noise. Girl. Boys, 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 come along with me. Girls' voices. Boys, 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 kiss Gwenny where she says, or give her a penny. Go on, Gwenny. Girl. Kiss me in Goosegog Lane, or give me a penny. What's your name? First boy. Billy. Girl. Kiss me in Goosegog Lane, Billy, or give me a penny, silly. First boy. Gwenny, Gwenny, I kiss you in Goosegog Lane. Now I haven't got to give you a penny. Girls' voices. Boys, 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 kiss Gwenny where she says, or give her a penny. Go on, Gwenny. Girl. Kiss me on, how do you pronounce that again? The name of the town? Somebody knew last week.
Yeah, Donna does.
Paragob.
Again, please?
Paragob.
Okay, thank you.
Paragob.
The Regub Hill. Kiss me on the Regub Hill, or give me a penny. What's your name? Second book. Johnny Christo. Girl, kiss me on the Regub Hill, Johnny Christo, or give me a penny, mister. Gwenny, Gwenny, I kiss you on the Regub Hill. Now I haven't got to give you a penny. Girls' voices. Boys, 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 kiss Gwenny where she says, or give her a penny. Go on, Gwenny. Girl, kiss me in Milkwood, or give me a penny. What's your name? Third boy. Dickie. Girl, kiss me in Milkwood, Dickie, or give me a penny quickly. Third boy. Gwenny, Gwenny, I can't kiss you in Milkwood. Girls' voices. Gwenny, ask him why. Girl, why? Third boy. Because my mother says I mustn't. Girls' voices. Cowardly, cowardly custard. Cowardy, cowardy custard. Give Gwenny a penny. Girl, give me a penny. Third boy. I haven't got any. Girls' voices. Put him up in the river, up to his liver. Quick, quick, dirty dick. Beat him on the bum with a rhubarb stick. Aye. Hush. Next, please.
First voice, and the shrill girls giggle and master around him and squeal as they clutch and thrash, and he blubbers away downhill with his patch pants falling, and his tear splash blush burns all the way as the triumphant bird-like sisters scream with buttons in their claws, and bully brothers hoot after him his little nickname and his mother's shame and his father's wickedness, with the loose wild barefoot women of the hobbles of the hills. It all means nothing at all, and howling for his milky mum, for her caul and buttermilk and cow breath, and Welsh cakes and the far birth smelling bed, and the moonlit kitchen of her arms. He'll never forget as he paddles blind home to the weeping end of the world. Then his tormentors tussle and run to the Cockle Street sweet shop, their pennies sticky as honey, to buy from Miss Mafanwy Price, who is cocky and neat as a puff-bosomed robin, and her small round buttocks tight as thicks, gobstoppers big as wrens that rainbow as you suck, brandy balls, wine gums, hundreds and thousands, licorice sweet as sick, nougat to tug and ribbon out like another red rubbery tongue, gum to glue in girls' curls, crimson cough drops to spit blood, ice cream cornets, dandelion and burdock, raspberry and cherryade, pop goes the weasel and the wind. Next.
Second voice. Gossamer Bainan, high heels, out to school. The sun hums down through the cotton flowers of her dress into the bell of her heart and buzzes in the honeyed air, and couches and kisses, lazy, loving, and boozed in her red-berried breast. Eyes run from the trees and windows of the street, streaming gossamer, and strip her to the nipples and the bees. She blazes naked past the sacred sailor's arms, the only woman on the diademed earth. Sinbad sailors places on her thighs, still dew damp from the first man-growing cock-crow garden his reverent goat-bearded hands. Gossamer Bainin, I don't care if he is common, second voice. She whispers to her sallow day, deep self. Gossamer Bainin, I want to gobble him up. I don't care if he does drop his H's. Second voice. She tells the stripped and mother of the world, big-beamed and Eve-hipped spring of herself. Gossamer Bainin, so long as he's all cucumber and hooves. Second voice. Sinbad sailors watches her go by, demure and proud, and schoolmarm in her crisp flower dress and sun-defying hat, with never a look or lilt or wriggle, the butcher's unmelting ice-maiden daughter, veiled forever from the hungry hug of his eyes. Next.
Sinbad sailors. O Gossamer Bainin, why are you so proud? Second voice. He grieves to his Guinness. Sinbad sailors. O beautiful, beautiful Gossamer Bee, I wish that you were for me. I wish you were not so educated. Second voice. She feels his goat beard tickler in the middle of the world like a tuft of wiry fire, and she turns in a terror of delight away from his whips and whiskery conflagration, and sits down in the kitchen to a plate heaped high with chips and the kidneys of lamb. First voice. In the blind-drawn dark dining room of schoolhouse, dusty and echoing as a dining room in a vault, Mr. and Mrs. Pugh are silent over cold grey cottage pie. Mr. Pugh reads as he forks ground meat in from the lives of the great poisoners. He has bound a plain brown paper cover round the book. Slyly, between slow mouthfuls, he side spies up at Mrs. Pugh, poisons her with his eye, then goes on reading. He underlines certain passages and smiles in secret. Mrs. Pugh, persons with manners do not read at table. First voice, says Mrs. Pugh. She swallows a digestive tablet as big as a horse pill, washing it down with clouded pea soup water. Pause. Mrs. Pugh, some persons were brought up in pigsties. Mr. Pugh, things don't read at table, dear. First voice. Bitterly she flicks dust from the broken cruet. It settles on the pie in a thin, gnat rain. Mr. Pugh, pigs can't read, my dear. Mrs. Pugh, I know one who can. Next, please.
First voice. Alone in the hissing laboratory of his wishes, Mr. Pugh minces among bad vats and Jeroboams, tiptoes through spinies of murdering herbs, agony dancing in his crucibles, and mixes especially for Mrs. Pugh a venomous porridge unknown to toxicologists, which will scald and viper through her until her ears fall off like figs. Her toes grow big and black as balloons, and steam comes screaming out of her navel. Mrs. Pugh, you know best, dear. First voice, says Mr. Pugh, and quick as a flash, he ducks her in rat soup. Mrs. Pugh, what's that book by your truff, Mr. Pugh? Mr. Pugh, it's a theological work, my dear. Lives of the great saints. First voice, Mrs. Pugh smiles, and icicle forms in the cold air of the dining vault. Mrs. Pugh, I saw you talking to a saint this morning, Saint Polly Garter. She was martyred again last night. Mrs. Organ Morgan saw her with Mr. Waldo. Mrs. Organ Morgan, and when they saw me, they pretended they were looking for Ness. Second voice, and Mrs. Organ Morgan to her husband, with her mouth full of fish as a pelican's. Mrs. Organ Morgan, but you don't go nesting in long combinations, I said to myself, like Mr. Waldo was wearing, and your dress nearly over your head like Polly Garter's. Oh, they didn't fool me. Next.
Second voice. A big bird gulp, and the flounder's gone. She licks her lips and goes stabbing again. Mrs. Oregon Morgan. And when you think of all the babies she's got, then all I can say is she better give up bird nesting. That's all I can say. Isn't it the right kind of hobby? It isn't the right kind of hobby at all for the woman who can't say no, even to midgets. Remember Bob Spit? He wasn't even bigger than a baby, and he gave her two. But they're two nice boys. I say that. Fred Spit and Arthur. Sometimes I like Fred best, and sometimes I like Arthur. Who do you like best, Oregon? Oregon Morgan. Bach, without any doubt. Bach every time for me. Mrs. Oregon Morgan. Oregon Morgan, you haven't been listening to a word I said. It's Oregon, Oregon all the time with you. First voice. And she burst into tears, and in the middle of her salty howling nimbly spears a small flatfish and pelican it whole. Oregon Morgan, and then Palestrina. Second voice says Oregon Morgan. Next, please.
First voice. Lord Cutglass in his kitchen, full of time, squats down to a dog dish marked Fido of peppery fish scraps and listens to the voices of his 66 clocks, one for each year of his loony age, and watches with love their black and white, moony, lolly-lipped faces talking the earth away. Slow clocks, quick clocks, pendulum heart knocks, China alarm, grandfather cuckoo clocks, shaped like Noah's whirling ark, clocks that bicker in marble ships, clocks in the womb of glass women, hours of glass charmers, tit-wit, tit-woo clocks, clocks that pluck tunes, Vesuvius clocks, and all black bells and lava, Niagara clocks that cataract their ticks, old-time weeping clocks with ebony beards, clocks with no hands, forever drumming out time without ever knowing what time it is. Oh, I like that. His 66 singers are all set at different hours. Lord Cutglass lives in a house and a life at siege. Any minute or dark day now, the unknown enemy will loot and savage downhill, but they will not catch him napping. 66 different times in his fish slimy kitchen, ping, strike, tick, chime, and tock. Next, please.
Second voice. The lust and lilt and lather and emerald breeze and crackle of the bird praise and body of spring, with its breasts full of rivering May milk, means, to that lordly fish-head nibbler, nothing but another nearness to the tribes and navies of the last black day, who will sear and pillage down Armageddon Hill to have his double-locked, rusty-shattered, tick-tock, dust-scrabbled shack at the bottom of the town that has fallen head over bells in love. Polly Gardner. And I'll never have such loving again. Second voice. Pretty Polly hums and longs. Polly Gardner. Now when the farmers' boys on the first fair day come down from the hills to drink and be gay, before the sun sinks I'll lie there in their arms, for they're good bad boys from the lonely farms. I always think as we tumble into bed of little Willie Wee, who is dead. Dead? Dead. First voice. The sun, slow, lulling afternoon yawns and moons through the dozy town. The sea lulps, laps, and idles in with fishes sleeping in its lap. The meadow still as Sunday. The shut-eye tasseled bulls, the goat and daisy dingles nap happy and lazy. The dumb duck pond snooze, clouds sag and pillow on Claregub Hill. Pigs grunt in a wet wallow bath and smile as they snout and dream. They dream of the acorn swill of the world, the rooting for pig fruit, the bagpipe dugs of the mother sow, the squeal and snuffle and yeses of the women pigs in rut. They mud bask and snout in the pig-loving sun, their tails curl, they rollick and slobber and snore to deep, smug afternoon sleep. Donkeys angelically drowse on donkey down. Mrs. Pugh, person with manners. Second voice, snaps Mrs. Cold Pugh. Mrs. Pugh, do not nod at the table. First voice. Mr. Pugh cringes awake. He puts on a soft, soaping smile. It is sad and gray under his nicotine, eggplant, yellow, weeping walrus, Victorian mustache worn thick and long in memory of Dr. Crippen. Mrs. Pugh. You should wait until you retire to your sty. Second voice. Says Mrs. Pugh, sweet as a razor. His fawning, measly quarter smile freezes. Sly and silent, he foxes into his chemist's den, and there, in a hiss and prussic circle of cauldrons and phials brimful with pox and the Black Death, cooks up a fricassee of deadly nightshade, nicotine, hot frog, cyanide, and bat spit for his needling stalactite hag and bed-nagged of a poker-backed nutcracker wife. Mr. Pugh. I beg your pardon, my dear. Second voice. He murmurs with a wheedle. Anne Doyle?
I'm here. First voice. Captain Cat, at his window, thrown aside to the sun, and the clippered seas he sailed long ago when his eyes were blue and bright. Slumbers and voyages, ear-ringed and rolling. I love you, Rosie Probert, tattooed on his belly. He brawls with broken bottles in the fog and babble of the dark dock bars, roves with a herd of short and good time cows in every naughty port, and twines his houses with the drowned and the blousy-breasted dead. He weeps as he sleeps and sails, and the tears run down his grog-blossomed nose. One voice of all he remembered most dearly as his dream buckets down. Lazy early Rosie, with the flaxen thatch, whom he shared with Tom Fred, the donkey man, and many another seaman. Clearly and near to him speaks from the bedroom of her dust. In that gulf and haven, fleets by the dozen have anchored for the little haven, the night, but she speaks to Captain Napping, cat alone, Mrs. Probert. Rosie Probert, from Duck Lane, Jack, quacked twice and asked for Rosie. It's the one love for peace sea life that was sardined with women. Rosie Probert softly. What seas did you see, Tom Cat, in your sailoring days, long, long ago? What sea beasts were in the wavery green when you were my master? Captain Cat. I'll tell you the truth. Seas barking like seals, blue seas and green, seas covered with eels, and mermen and whales. Rosie Probert. What seas did you sail, old whaler, when, on the bubbly waves between Frisco and Wales, you were my bosun? Captain Cat. As true as I'm here, dear. Your Tom Cat's tart, your landlubber Rosie, your cozy love, my easy as easy, my true sweetheart. Seas green as a bean, seas gliding with swans in the seal barking moon. Rosie Probert. What seas were rocking my little deckhand, my favourite husband, in your sea boots and hunger, my duck, my whaler, my honey, my daddy, my pretty sugar sailor, with your name on your belly, with my name on your belly, when you were a boy long, long ago. Captain Cat, I'll tell you no lies, the only sea I saw was the seesaw sea with you riding on it. Lie down, lie easy, let me shipwreck in your ties. Rosie Probert. Knocked twice, Jack, at the door of my grave and asked for Rosie. Captain Cat. Rosie Probert. Rosie Probert. Remember her, she is forgetting. The earth, while filled her mouth, is vanishing from her. Remember me. I have forgotten you. I am going into the darkness of the darkness forever. I have forgotten that I was ever born. Joe?
Child, look. First voice, says a child to her mother as they passed by the window of Schooner House. Captain Cat is crying. Captain Cat is crying. Come back, come back. First voice, up the silences and echoes of the passages of the eternal night. He's crying all over his nose, says the child Mother and child move on down the street. He's got a nose like strawberries. First voice, the child says, and then she forgets him too. She sees in the still middle of the blue-bagged bay, no good boyo, fishing from Zanzibar. Child, no good boyo, gave me 3 pennies yesterday, but I wouldn't. First voice, the child tells her mother. Second voice, boyo catches a whalebone corset. This is all he has caught all day. Bloody boyo, bloody funny fish. Second voice, Mrs. Diebread too, gypsies up his mind's slow eye, dressed only in a bangle. No good boyo, she's wearing her nightgown, pleadingly. Would you like this nice wet corset, Mrs. Diebread too? No, I won't. No good boyo, and a bite of my little apple. No hope, Katrina.
First voice. She shakes her brass nightgown and he chases her out of his mind. And when he comes gusting back, there's a bloodshot center in his eye. A geisha girl grins and bows in a kimono of rice paper. No good boyo. I want to be good boyo, but nobody'll let me. First voice. He sighs as she rides politely. The land fades, the sea flocks silently away, and through the warm white clouds where he lies, silky, tingling, uneasy Eastern music undoes him in a Japanese minute. Second voice. The afternoon buzzes like lazy bees around the flowers around May Rose Cottage. Nearly asleep in the field of nanny goats who hum and gently butt the sun, she blows love on a puffball. May Rose Cottage, lazily. He loves me not. He loves me not. He loves me, the dirty old fool. Second voice. Lazy, she lies alone in clover and sweet grass, 17, and never been so sweet in the grass, ho ho. First voice. The Reverend Eli Jenkins, inky in his cool front parlor or poem room, tells only the truth in his life work, the population, main industry, shipping, history, topography, flora and fauna of the town he worships. In the White Book of Larregib, portraits of famous bards and preachers, all fur and wool, squint to the kneecaps, hang over him heavy as sheep. Next to faint lady watercolors of pale green milkwood, like a lettuce salad dying. His mother propped against a pot in a palm, with her wedding ring, waist, and bust like a black-clothed dining table, suffers her stays. Next, please.
Reverend Eli Jenkins, oh angels, be careful there with your knives and forks. First voice, he prays, there is no known likeness of his father, Isu, who, undog-collared because of his little weakness, was side to the bone one harvest by mistake, when sleeping with his weakness in the corn. He lost all ambition and died with one leg. Reverend Eli Jenkins, poor dad, second voice, grieves the Reverend Eli. Reverend Eli Jenkins, to die of drink in agriculture, second voice, Farmer Watkins in Salt Lake Farm hates his cattle on the hill as he hoes them into milking. Uta Watkins in a fury, damn you, you damn dairies. Second voice, a cow kisses him. Uta Watkins, bite her to death. Second voice, he shouts to his deaf dog who smiles and licks his hands. Uta Watkins, go him, sit on him, Daisy. Second voice, he bawls to the cow who barbed him with her tongue, and she moves gentle words as he raves and dances among his summer-breeded slaves, walking delicately to the farm. The coming of the end of spring day is already reflected in the lakes of their great eyes. Bessie Bighead greets them by names she gave them when they were maidens. Bessie Bighead, Peg, Meg, Buttercup, Moll, Fan from the Castle, Theodosia and Daisy. Second voice. They bow their heads. Lewis.
First voice. Look up Bessie Bighead in the White Book of Largub, and you will find a few haggard rags and the one poor glittering thread of her history laid out in pages there with as much love and care as the lock of hair of a first lost love. Conceived in Milkwood, born in a barn, wrapped in paper, left on a doorstep, big-headed and bass-voiced, she grew in the dark until long dead Gober Owen kissed her when she wasn't looking because he was dared. Now in the light she'll work, sing, milk, say the cow's sweet names, and sleep until the night sucks out her soul and spits it into the sky. In her lifelong love light, holily Bessie milks the fond lake-eyed cows as dusk showers slowly down over byre, sea, and town. Utah Watkins curses for the farmyard on a cart house. Utah Watkins, gallop, you bleeding cripple. Next, please.
First voice. And the huge horse neighs softly, as though he had given it a lump of sugar. Now the town is dusk. Each cobble, donkey, goose, and gooseberry street is a thoroughfare of dusk and ceremonial dust, and night's first darkening snow, and the sleep of birds drift under and through the live dusk of this place of love. Tarragub is the capital of dusk. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, at the first drop of the dusk shower, seals all her sea view doors, draws the sherm-free blinds, sits erect as a dry dream on a high-backed hygienic chair, and wills herself to cold, quick sleep. At once, at twice, Mr. Ogmore and Mr. Pritchard, who all day long have been gossiping like ghosts in the woodshed, planning the loveless destruction of their glass window, reluctantly sigh and sidle into her clean house. Mr. Pritchard, you first, Mr. Ogmore. Mr. Ogmore, after you, Mr. Pritchard. Mr. Pritchard, no, Mr. Ogmore, you withered her first. First voice. And then through the keyhole with tears, where their eyes once were, they ooze and grumble. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, husbands, first voice, she says in her sleep. There is acid love in her voice for one of the two shambling phantoms. Mr. Ogmore hopes that it is not for him. So does Mr. Pritchard. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, I love you both. Next, please.
To me.
Yes,
I love you
ma'am.
both. Oh, Mr. Ogmore. Oh, Mrs. Ogmore. Mr. Pritchard with horror. Oh, Mrs. Pritchard. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard. Soon it will be time to go to bed. Tell me your tasks in order. Mr. Ogmore and Mr. Pritchard. We must take our pajamas from the drawer marked pajamas. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard says coldly, and then you must take them off. Second voice. Down in the dusking town, May Rose Cottage, still lying in clover, listens to the nanny goats chew, draws circles of lipstick around her nipples. May Rose Cottage. I'm fast. I'm a bad lot. God will strike me dead. I'm 17 and I'll go to hell. Second voice. She tells the goats. May Rose Cottage. You just wait. I'll sin till I blow up. Second voice. She lies deep, waiting for the worst to happen. The goats champ and sneer. The first voice. And at the doorway of Bethesda House, the Reverend Jenkins recites to Lagreb Hill his sunset poem. Reverend Eli Jenkins' poem. Every morning when I wake, dear Lord, a little prayer I make. Oh, please to keep thy lovely eye on all poor creatures born to die. And every evening as sundown, I ask a blessing on the town, for whether we want the night or no, I'm sure is always touch and go. We are not wholly bad or good who live our lives under Milkwood. and thou, I know, wilt be the first to see our best side, not our worst. Oh, let us see another day. Bless this night, I pray. And to the sun we all will bow and say goodbye, but just for now. Next.
First voice. Jack Black prepares once more to meet his Satan in the wood. He grinds his night teeth, closes his eyes, climbs into his religious trousers. There are flies sewn up with cobbler's thread and pads out, torched and Bibled grimly, joyfully into the already sinning dusk. Jack Black. Off to Gomorrah. Second voice. And Lily Smalls is up to no good boil in the washhouse. First voice. And Cherry Owen, sober as Sunday as he is every day of the week, goes off happy as Saturday to get drunk as a deacon, as he does every night. Cherry Owen. I always say she's got two husbands. First voice. Says Cherry Owen. Cherry Owen. One drunk and one sober. First voice. And Mrs. Cherry simply says, Mrs. Cherry Owen, and aren't I a lucky woman, because I love them most. Both. Sinbad. Evening, Cherry. Cherry Owen. Evening, Sinbad. Sinbad. What do you have? Cherry Owen. Too much. Too much. Sinbad. The Sailor's Arms is always open. First voice. Sinbad suffers to himself heartbroken. Sinbad. Oh, Gossamer, open yours. Next, please.
First voice. Dusk is drowned forever until tomorrow. It is all at once night now. The windy town is a hill of windows, and from the lapped waves, the lights of the lamps in the windows call back the day and the dead that have run away to sea. All over the calling dark, babies and old men are bribed and lullabied to sleep. First woman's voice. Hushaby, baby. The Sandman is coming. Second woman's voice, singing. Rockabye, grandpa, in the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. Down will grandpa, whiskers and all. First voice. Or their daughters cover up the old unwinking men like parrots, and in their little dark in the lit and bustling young kitchen corners, all night long they watch beady-eyed and the long night through in case death catches them asleep. Next, please.
Second voice. Unmarried girls alone in their privately bridal bedrooms, powder and curl for the dance of the world. Accordion music, dim. They make in front of their looking glasses haughty or come-hithering faces for the young men in the street outside, at the lamplit leaning corners, who wait with the all-at-once wind to wolve and whistle. Accordion music louder, then fading. First voice. The drinkers in the Sailor's Arms drink to the failure of the dance. A drinker. Down with the waltzing and the skipping. Cherry Owen. Dancing isn't natural. First voice. Righteously, says Cherry Owen, who has just downed 16 pints of flat, warm, thin Welsh bitter beer. Second voice. A farmer's lantern glitters, a spark on Clwb hillside. Accordion music fades into silence. First voice. Clwb Hill, writes the Reverend Jenkins in his poem room. Reverend L.I. Jenkins. Clwb Hill, that mystic tumulus, that memorial of peoples that dwelt in the region of Clwb before the Celts of the land of summer, and where the old wizards made themselves a wife out of flowers. Second voice. Mr. Waldo, in his corner of the Sailor's Arms, sings, Mr. Waldo, in Pembroke City when I was young, I lived by the castle keep. Sixpence a week was my wages for working for the chimbley sweep. 7 cold pennies he gave me, not a farthing more or less. and all the fare I could afford was parsnip, gin, and watercress. I did not need a knife and fork or a bib up to my chin to dine on a dish of watercress and a jug of parsnip gin. Did you ever hear a growing boy to live so cruel cheap on grub that has no flesh and bones and liquor that makes you weep? Sweep, sweep, chimney sweep. I wept through Pembroke City, poor and barefoot in the snow, till a kind young woman took pity. Poor little chimney sweep, she said, black as the ace of spades. Oh, nobody swept my chimney since my husband went his ways. Come and sweep my chimney, come and sweep my chimney, she sighed to me with a blush. Come and sweep my chimney, come and sweep my chimney, bring along your chimney brush. Anne Doyle, please.
Okay, first voice. Blind Captain Cat climbs into his bunk like a cat he sees in the dark. Through the voyages of his tears, he sails to see the dead. Captain Cat, Dancing Williams, first round, still dancing. Captain Cat, Jonah Jarvis, third round, still. Curly Beaven Skull, Rosie Pobert, Rosie with God, she has forgotten dying. The dead come out in their Sunday best, litten to the night breaking. Organ Morgan goes to the chapel to play the organ. He plays it alone at night to anyone who will listen. Lovers, revellers, the silent dead, tramps or sheep. He sees Bach lying on a tombstone. Organ Morgan. Johann Sebastian, Cherry on drunkenly. Oh, Organ Morgan. Johann Sebastian mighty Bach, oh Bach, Bach, Bach. Cherry on, to hell with you. Joe, do you want to finish it?
There's Cherry Owen, who is resting on the tombstone on his way home. Mr. Mog Edwards and Miss Nathaniel Price, happily apart from one another at the top and the sea end of the town, write their every night letters of love and desire. In the warm white oak of Cargib, you will find the little maps of the islands of their contentment. Oh, my Mug, I am yours forever. And she looks around with pleasure at her own neat, never dull room, which Mr. Mog Edwards will never enter. Mr. Mog Edwards, come to my arms, my Fanway. And he hugs his lovely money to his own heart. And Mr. Waldo, drunk in the dusky wood, hugs his lovely Polly Garter under the eyes and rattling tongues of the neighbors and the birds, and he does not care. He smacks his live red lips, but it is not his name that Polly Garter whispers as she lies under the oak and loves him back. 6 feet deep that name stings in the cold earth. But I always think as we tumble into bed of little Willie Wee, who is dead, dead, dead. Training was a thing.
First voice. The thin night darkens. A breeze from the creased water sighs the streets close under milk waking wood. The wood whose every tree foot's cloven in the black glad sight of the hundreds of lovers, that is a God-built garden to Mary and sailors, who knows there is heaven on earth, and the chosen people of his kind fire in the Regob's land, that is the fair day, farm hands wantoning, ignorant chapel of bridesmaids, and to the Reverend Eli Jenkins, a green leaf sermon on the innocence of man, the suddenly wind-shaken wood springs awake for the second dark time this one spring day.
That is so nice.
Yeah, it's a lovely thing to have read. You know, it's really kind of unique and kind of he wanted to. It wasn't really complete. He had plans to extend it, especially towards the end. The evening sequence he thought was too short, and he was going to extend it and so forth. But he died in the meantime.
My copy has a few places where there are some words missing, I think, because
Yeah,
Mine too.
little bit missing. Yeah.
little, yeah.
When he put it on in for the first time in America, he had changed some of it for the American audience, and that was in I think in May in '53. And when he came back to England, the BBC got hold of him and they wanted him to kind of complete it and get a version going for the radio. And I think he only finished it. Well, it wasn't really finished, but he had the version for them in October, I think, of '53, and then he died on the 9th of November '53. Yeah, so it was literally the last thing that he wrote as well. Yeah.
There was I caught it on television. It's got to be a very long time ago. It was someplace in New York. They did a reading of this. Actors did a reading of this, and they produced it on television. And it brought this so to life. It was just amazing to hear it when you have professionals reading it. The depth of the meaning of it is so much more evident.
Yeah.
But I think you would know this play was Dylan Thomas if you didn't know it was Dylan Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched the video of the Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, Peter O'Toole. It was made in the '70s, early '70s. Of course, the thing is, what was really nice about it is how the landscape that was filmed around the characters, the landscape, the cityscape, the water features. That part was the best of the film. The characters were kind of caricatures, and I know there's fun in the story, but it would be nice just to see them in their own tragic self.
Yeah.
That's what the reading did that I saw.
Yeah.
They became very human. They weren't, caricatures, as you say.
Yeah. They weren't being made fun of.
No.
They were who they were. And their lives are odd or personable to them, but real at any rate.
Yeah. And his use of words, are just amazing to me.
Yes.
How he lets that the one thing about he just says where was it? I marked some things here because just as examples, but you would know that I couldn't find them right off. But the Dusking Town was one of them. I loved that. The Dusking Town. I mean, immediately you see something. And I love the germ-free blinds.
Yes.
The germ-free blinds, and then at the end of the paragraph, reluctantly sigh and sidle into her clean house, which you already know is a clean house.
Yeah.
Because of germ-free blinds. I things like that. He's just a genius at things like that.
Yeah.
It's such an unusual mixture of childrenish things mixed with adult themes, mixed with life themes, mixed with death themes.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah, it's all there.
Could people see the James Joyce, the Ulysses in there in places? Like Cherry Owen drunk and Cherry Owen sober, Philip drunk, Philip sober. And the Apostles' Creed, and this is just forgetting that as I went through. And as you say, the language, imagine to die of drink in agriculture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
the
that was
daughters
funny.
covering up the old unwinking men like parrots.
Yeah,
Speaking as an old unwinking
that was funny.
man.
Mm.
And the poet who has his poem the same every morning and every evening, Frank Eli Jenkins.
Yeah.
The back of my text, there's a full cast of the characters from the first broadcast.
Oh.
And I was just counting them now. There were 69 voices. And
Oh,
that didn't include the children of Lochgarn School from Carmarthen.
Right.
Some amount of voices.
Yeah.
Led, of course, by Richard Burton.
Yeah. I saw it performed once that stuck in my mind. And what I still remember is the cattle. There are 7 cattle there. And they actually had cattle, humans on all fours.
Yeah.
Okay.
As cattle who came out, and they were fantastic. I mean, they really just stole the show.
This was a stage production, Joe, was it?
Yeah, down Andrews Lane, upstairs in Andrews Lane, we did experimental stuff, and one of my pals was Captain Cat, you see.
oh.
And I came away liking the cattle,
So,
Yeah, the
Ann
captain-
Meisner,
What?
Ann Meisner, you said that you watched
The video.
the video, and where did you find the video, if I may ask?
My library. We have one of the best libraries here in Cleveland Heights. You ask for something and it's there from any library around the area. They'll ship it into our library.
Okay, so they're using interlibrary loan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they actually use it.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh,
some libraries don't act. They kind of say they do it, and they don't
Yeah.
actually do it.
I once got one from some very obscure town somewhere.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
couldn't believe where it came from. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, it was black and white,
Mhm.
except for Elizabeth Taylor, who was dressed with the bluest eyeshadow and fluffiest hair. I mean, she must have been involved with Richard Burton by this point, of course. But it was she plays the role of Rosie, the lover of Captain Cat.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of odd, you just think the agreement was to make her look good, but it was out of keeping, I think, with the townspeople.
Mm-hmm. So it was black and white except for Elizabeth Taylor?
Yeah.
That's odd. That's very
It's
odd.
odd. Yeah, it is odd. And it's too bad because
Yeah.
I think if she had been in black and white too, her beauty would have shown through. But it would have been more of a classic rendering of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sounds like Schindler's List, doesn't it?
Ocean.
Sorry, yeah.
The pink. Yeah, with the
red
little
coat.
girl.
Yeah.
The red coat, yeah. I just wonder if a blue Elizabeth Taylor had any particular significance, It seems a strange thing to do.
Yeah, I don't know, but they her acting isn't up to Dylan Thomas's level. I thought it just wasn't her role. The way she played it and the way they played her was not the best part of the film.
Yeah. She doesn't seem the right person for the role to begin with.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You could imagine Richard Burton carrying it because he has the voice,
Yes.
I've listened to his performance and it's terrific. That sonorous sound coming from deep inside him,
Yeah.
Well, that's like Dylan Thomas with that same voice. I always hear him saying, I must own it somewhere because I can hear him saying and death shall have no dominion.
Yeah.
With that voice, you know,
It would, as Tom suggested, it would be interesting to read his poetry.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I know we've got a lot of stuff on for reading, but it's worth bearing in mind. You know,
Mhm.
Do you have a
Yes.
particular recommendation, Tom? I mean, is there a
It's a collected works, isn't there, Tom?
Yeah.
collected
His collected
works?
poems, and yeah, you get them. Yeah, and I think he has about 3 collections, but you get copies of the collected poems. I think fairly handy.
Yeah.
that's
You
it.
know, there's plenty,
Mm.
and I think
Do you-
I think there's enough for each of us to read. You know, a poem that, you know, whatever, and for the evening, I read 2 poems for the evening, kind of talk about them briefly, and you know, this kind of thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so,
Beautiful,
okay.
the beautiful language, the way he uses words in them is extraordinary, you know.
Mhm.
Like he really was a kind of an extraordinarily gifted young person, and you know, it came out of nowhere, really. This language he almost created himself, and the way he used it in the poems, and yeah, so it'd be really
And
good.
when I was,
Yeah,
sorry, Tom, go ahead.
No, Darren,
No,
go
I was
ahead.
just going to say, when I was picking up my copy of Under Milkwood, I bought it in Hodges Figgis,
Yeah.
and there were certainly various volumes of poetry by him there as well.
Yeah,
And I'm sure it's available online too.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess if Under Milkwood is available online, that then
Was his first language English or Welsh?
He was
In,
he was prohibited
Sorry,
from
Tom.
speaking Welsh by his parents.
yeah.
So he first cut his teeth on Welsh in the home, and then learned
No.
English. Is that correct?
No, the other way around, Dave. He was prohibited from speaking Welsh by his parents.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Okay.
yeah.
But then he picked it up later.
Okay.
Isn't that
Thanks.
right, Tom? I'm sorry I cut across you again.
No, it's just just
Yeah.
what you were saying. Sorry, yeah, exactly, yeah. It's unusual, kind of, yeah.
so this was a thing in Wales, I guess, where
Mm.
some parents did not want their children to speak Welsh because it would handicap them.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And also, I think I said this before, there was a north-south divide in Wales, so that you would find the traditional Welsh speakers in the north, but not in the south.
Oh, I see.
And he was from Swansea, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Or down that neck of the woods.
Hmm.
I loved where we started today. I loved the fishermen and this expression, which is what you've all been talking about there, when you could see them all, they're down the harbour, where the fishermen spit and prop the morning up. Basically, they do nothing.
Yeah.
It's a great expression.
Yeah.
Just prop the morning up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they had no intention. Then they're off up the hill to the pub.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, you could see them leaning against the wall.
yeah, having a discussion. But they wouldn't do anything.
There's another phrase, a bit sort of like that: dusk is drowned forever until tomorrow.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yes.
Language becomes meaningless almost. Language.
Well, I have to say that I did enjoy the dinner time with Mr. and Mrs. Pugh.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yes. Well, you could hear the acid in her words, couldn't you?
Oh,
Yeah.
Could you not do that in your style?
But, really, a lot of this really struck me as adult themes told in a children's way.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
where they just, how children can, they can use a lot of rhythm in their speech, and they just cut to the quick.
Oh yeah.
There's no beating around the bush. That comes later. That's older children start getting more devious.
Yeah.
And then by the time they get to be our age, everything is totally lost.
Well, it's a wonderful thing.
Nancy Proby.
Yeah, it was a very good choice, Joe.
It's a good choice, and I would suggest that maybe in a year or so we might actually want to circle back around.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, here's
We'll have
another.
digested it by then.
Just another little words here that I just loved. The hungry hug of his eyes.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I thought that was awfully good.
yeah.
I mean, there's one after another, but some of them stick out a little more.
That's why it's good to come back to it subsequently. I think you probably pick up more of that as you do. A bit like reading Joyce, really.
And the style of the narration is so wonderful. I mean, you go from one character to another, and it's almost seamless, except that you're identifying who the character is that's speaking. But you just get the the simultaneity of the scene of people together, not seeing each other, but in the same area.
What I liked so much was that Rosie Probert starts out, and you kind of have more of a lighthearted feeling about her, and she becomes tragic.
Yeah.
The further you go into the work.
Yeah.
I think she's about the only character that has kind of a progression of evolving, a character that evolves into something more than when you first meet her.
Gosh.
But the sailor, the Captain Cat,
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
he's blind. He sits by his window. In the video, they have the window as encased in a boat. It's just like an added facade to a building. But he's just the story of him sitting and rocking and thinking, and you can feel the water under him, and all the ports he called at, and all the women he would have known, but he remembers Rosie, and she's the one who spoke with him. Yeah. It's sad. It's poignant. Summary of a life.
Yeah, because all he's seeing are his memories, because he can see anything else.
Yeah.
Do you see me, Captain? The white bone talking. I'm Tom Fred, the donkey man.
Yeah.
We shared the same girl once. Her name was Mrs. Probert. Woman's voice. Rosie Probert. 33 Duck Lane. Come on up, boys. I'm dead.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I have a preface in my version by Griff Rhys-Jones. The name might be familiar to you, but he's saying that there was a lot of criticism originally that this was a parody of Welsh people. I think the Irish suffer from the same thing, but he makes the point, would people read it now if it wasn't a parody of Welsh people?
Yeah.
And then he says, the scrambled radio play has gone on living. A few years back, Peter Blake produced a fascinating illustrated edition. The Royal National Theatre went to a care home for a setting in 2022. Anthony Hopkins has directed it. Elton John and George Martin have composed music for it. Great actors have performed it: Michael Sheen, Sian Phillips, Peter O'Toole, Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, Owen Teale, Rhys Ifans, Tom Hollander, Tom Jones, Alan Bennett, and Charlotte Church. So that's a broad cast as well. Pun intended.
I have the music in the back of my book.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, I do too.
Can you sing it as a duet?
I can't sing anything.
Oh, you mean it has the actual music score
Yeah.
with the lyrics?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Maybe somebody can sing.
Maybe
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
can hum it.
You have to be able to read music as well.
Yeah, that's it.
No, if Bill Kennedy were here, he would probably
Yes,
sing.
Yes,
for us.
yes.
You never go, yeah.
He
Yeah,
would
Bill.
just read
He
music
would.
at all. He'd know it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, the first one is the Tom, Dick, and Harry song by that Polly character.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All the men she's loved, yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting
I-
because in mine, that's the third song. There are two others before it.
Mm.
Number one is the Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail, and then the Children's Game. And
Yeah.
then
Mhm.
Polly Garter is before those, isn't she?
Yes, it is.
It's before but they're out of sequence. You've Mr. Waldo's song. Oh, yes. I wonder if there's such a book as Famous Poisoners or whatever the name of it is.
There probably is somewhere. There's everything.
I believe that Lois actually lives in the city where the head of the health department realized that there were a large number of people who were being poisoned.
Oh.
And so he made a specialty out of detecting poisons
Right.
in people who had died. And there's quite an interesting history of that.
Yeah.
Are a lot of people poisoned by others? Was
Oh,
that
yeah.
a con-
That's why they say you should never marry a nurse.
Well, at least not
They
one
say
that you're going to make angry.
They can do it without poison as well. All sorts of stories circulate about damp bed sheets on your side and all this sort of thing to check for if you're married to a nurse.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So the nurses. Oh, stop it. And at the same time, I live in the area of a couple of rows of houses, and I can see people like these all around me, even though it might a parody of a Welsh village. Human nature is the same everywhere.
Mhm.
Mhm.
We don't have a retired sea captain, but we've kind of got a retired long distance lorry driver,
So, just to look back about 5 minutes, did someone say that when this came out, the book, because I think Thomas would have been dead, but the book was accused, or the play was accused of caricaturing Welsh people? Did someone say that?
I
think
did,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was reading from the preface to my edition, Dave, by Griff Rhys Jones, who said that when it came out initially, that Welsh people, or some Welsh people, were a bit upset by the caricatures.
Yeah.
But he then went on to make the point that if he hadn't done caricatures, would anybody read the play now?
Well, this is an interesting point.
I think they would.
I'm sure, but It must be very difficult to give something. You're walking a knife edge, I think, to try to give something, genuine local flavor, without
Yeah.
being accused of lapsing over into caricature.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't know the history of Ulysses well enough to say, but I'm sure had the book been popular in Ireland and it wasn't, Joyce could have been accused of the same thing. I would think with
Joyce was afraid to go back to Dublin.
you know.
He was literally afraid to go back to Dublin. And he figured there would be some people that would not be looking at him kindly.
Yeah.
And I've heard it said too that sometimes stereotypes are, because that's what I think part of caricaturing is you're working with stereotypes, but sometimes stereotypes do point to deeper truths.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
I
Fully.
think the people in the Celtic nations have always been extra sensitive to that stereotype, to caricaturing, because of our history.
Because of the English view of the
Sure.
right?
Yeah, Ireland used to. I mean, when I was young, that was it. People would say, "Oh, you're letting the country down," but nobody talks like that anymore. With independence came self-confidence, and with self-confidence, you learn to laugh at yourself, and enjoy it. But you could see. I could remember an essay written by a member of my class in school, which was the essay subject was life in an Irish village, and one of the boys wrote a sort of a satire, and he got into huge trouble for writing. And we thought it was hilarious. It was the best bit of writing was done in our year. And but he had phrases like the lady down in the post office, the young lady with a pair of hands that'll frighten any cow. And that's what got him in trouble. But that kind of sensitivity, I can understand. You can understand it where you're constantly being told of the danger of giving self-government to backward peoples, but then when that's gone a generation later, it's all just good fun,
I think most nationalities are characterized in one way or another when you think about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even Americans.
Even Americans. Yeah.
But Joan, I think the point here, correct, I agree. I think the point maybe here is that if you have power and self-assurance, it's something you can take.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I'm of Scottish descent, and my forebears have a reputation for being thrifty to the point of excess. And so, as a Scot in good standing, I can say that I squeeze every nickel before I spend it and laugh about it because,
Yeah.
There's not the same history that other people have.
Nowadays, the Scottish just are good with money, and it's still. And there used to be a premium, and I was, again, going back a bit, I worked as an accountant, and there was a premium on Scottish accountants. They were considered the best.
Okay.
And they were one of the smallest. There were 5 accountancy bodies back in my day in the islands, in the 2 islands, and but the Scots had a premium. They got paid more because they were better with money. So it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know if they're still regarded like that.
Sure.
Well, on the other hand, one of these, I'm also, as you can tell with the name of Duncan, have an association with Scotland. And the part that I really liked was the idea that the Scots had dirt floors and incredible libraries.
Yes.
They were handy with steam engines as well,
Indeed, yes. And building bridges too.
All this kind of stuff, yeah.
Yes.
Engineer. Isn't Scotty the engineer of the Starship Enterprise?
Absolutely.
Yes.
James Doolan, and who's a Canadian actor, I'm proud to say,
That's right.
or was. And he actually, when he got the role, thought, okay, so what am I going to do? And he said, yeah, he'd pick up a Scottish accent because he felt that actually suited the sort of engineering practicality of what he was being asked to do, and he was quite successful with it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure, was it Gene Roddenberry, you know, must have sort of woken at 3 o'clock in the morning one night and said, I'm going to put all the nationalities on this ship. And there's a script almost written for him.
Yep.
So next week you're going to start My Brother's Keeper.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's the plan.
Okay.
Could I give my apologies at this stage for next week? I'm going to be missing. I'm afraid I'll be away. I'll be back in the following.
A lot of us are going to be missing, I
Yes.
think.
You know,
I'll
I
be
won't be watching the Eclipse.
I'll be watching the eclipse, so I won't be here either.
Yeah, me too. So
Very
Duncan,
good.
Yeah, actually, I may be engaged with family. It just depends, but I'll definitely get it started, and there's a good chance that I'll be able to fully participate anyway.
It seems a pity that a lot of people would miss the start of the book, you know.
Yeah.
Just thinking aloud, I just sort of thought 50% of the people said they wouldn't be here, you know, between everything.
Well, I wonder if I looked on Gutenberg to see if there was an online collection of Dylan Thomas poetry.
Yeah.
And if there is, that would be an opportunity to, instead of going ahead with and starting My Brother's Keeper, to read some of the poetry. And I even think that actually there is room to read parts of Under Milkwood and Stopping. And kind of discussing some of the you know, it comes in chunks.
Yeah, it does.
So, does anybody know of an online collection of Dylan Thomas poetry?
I have something. What do I have?
Tom, while we're thinking about this, you seem quite familiar with him. What copyright laws are still in effect? For instance, if you were to talk about "Do not go dying into the good night," could we find that online? Could we just do a Google search and pull it up on our screens?
Yeah.
Isn't copyright
Oh, sure.
50 years, 50 years post the death?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, you want me to check? I mean, I could certainly check that. Right.
No,
I'm
just
sure
after the Christmas before last, do you remember, Duncan, we did a poetry night and you had to pick a poem that you wanted to read. And I picked Dylan Thomas, Do Not Go Gently Into That Night. But I was in London, so I didn't have my poetry books with me. And I was able to pick that up on screen.
All
and
day,
read from there.
burn and rave at close of
And that
day,
was,
rage against the
Yeah.
dying light. The wise men just said Google and clicked, and and I
yeah,
have,
exactly.
it's it just that's all you have to do. But it's the American Academy of American Poets.
Okay.
So I would think we, like Tom was saying there, if we could all dig up, say, one poem, but maybe two, in case someone else has picked your poem, and then we'd have a poem or two up our sleeve, you know, and that'd make, especially if there's a small number, but you know, that would be.
I belong to a poetry group that does just that.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
I think Tom does as well, don't you, Tom? You go to the poetry tree. I used to go to the poetry tree. I got put out.
Yeah.
I got put out for bad behavior.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, if we had two poems each,
Yeah.
we could shift them around or whatever, and kind of, yeah. But I think
Yeah.
I think if we were going to do Dylan Thomas, I think it would be better to have everyone here, because then you'd have the whole group would be interchanging, rather than just maybe half the group doing Dylan Thomas.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, I would hate to miss it. I would hate to miss that. Yeah.
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 That's true, but it's an actual fact. As a person who is involved in quite a few groups. I mean, like we have a full set of people here tonight.
Yeah.
I think there's some missing, but this is a large group tonight. But that's not always true. And it's really, life is what it is.
Yeah.
So you're right. The ideal thing would be if everybody was here, to begin
Yeah, maybe you're right.
My Brother's Keeper, or to, do a Dylan Thomas poetry night, that sort of thing. But I think in the interest of just moving forward, that just have to move forward. And then if whoever does participate and says, God, we should do this again, it can be done again.
And like, if you're not here, you can always read the piece yourself. I'm just looking at the start of it, and
Yeah. Have an assignment.
of Brother's Keeper, and you just probably have 20 pages to read in your own time.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I will guarantee that I will start the meeting next Monday, and that I will put it on YouTube Live.
Hmm.
Okay, so just before we go, do we come bearing two poems from Dylan Thomas next week, or will it be something else?
No, I think we've gone back to Brother's Keeper. Oh, sorry.
We have. Okay, fair enough. Which is good. I just need to know.
Yeah. But I think it's a good suggestion to start looking for Dylan Thomas poems.
Yeah.
So we can do that at some point in the future.
Yeah.
We stick with the plan, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Thanks for
we can
fighting
stick
over-
with the
thanks for
plan,
fighting over
and then add on sometime in the indefinite future, we're going to do a Dylan Thomas
Okay.
poetry thing. Yeah, that sounds good. Because I know on this one under Milkwood, I mean, like I said, I really do hope that we will reread this at some time in the future, and that we will stop at certain points and look at the actual structure of the language and what he's doing. I don't know why I'm being drawn to this idea of actually looking at how language is being used, but I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think you're preaching to the choir on that one, because I think I think that's why we're here.
Yeah. By the way, Duncan, I've got that book coming to me. I've ordered it. Remembering, and the sounds of.
Oh,
words.
really? Okay. I think it's did you read the introduction?
No, I couldn't, but I there was very limited selection. So, but based on you recommended, that was enough for me. But I didn't pay the full price for it.
Okay, well, very good.
Bought it in France, so
Okay.
it's on its way. It's come very quickly.
Okay.
But
Okay.
As Dave says, that's why we're here. Like, even if we don't know it, that's what's.
I think so too. I think this, we're for two reasons: to understand how language works on us, and hopefully in due time, how we can actually use some of this to do some writing.
Well, there's that too, yeah.
You know, because particularly, oh, well, here, let me preach to what I think is the choir again. I mean, with AI coming on, the world has always been awash in very bad writing. But I'm convinced with AI, we're going to have a tsunami of really terrible writing.
Oh God, AI.
It's just, and a lot of really terrible art. Some of the art that I see coming out from the AI thing is worse than the worst bad art I've ever seen. So,
Oh,
you
so
know,
scary.
we need to build a strong little seaworthy ship to, you know, make it across this period of time. And, you know, anyway,
A little arc.
a little arc. That's right. Well, there we go. 2 poems of Tom Dylan Thomas.
Yeah.
Noah had, you know, pair of animals, brought them on by pairs. We can bring Dylan Thomas by pairs.
By pairs.
Okay, this has been fun. And Joan, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
the suggestion. You
Yeah,
know,
thanks, everybody.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I
excellent.
must
Okay.
go.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Okay.
Bye.